A really key concept in economics, and one of the first major diagrammatic concepts that you come across, is often the production possibility frontier. May well be called the production possibility curve. They mean essentially the same thing. This is the first of a couple of videos that I'm going to do on this, and we normally start by thinking about a straight line PPF. It's a slightly simpler way of looking at things. The next video is going to deal with a slightly more complex, slightly more realistic curved PPF. But there are three main concepts that you should already have looked at in the course. So just very quickly go through what each of those mean. The first of them is scarcity. So we should have seen and talked about the basic economic problem, this idea of the fact that there are only limited resources, but there are unlimited wants, and that generates scarcity. The fact that there is scarcity then means that there is an opportunity cost when we have to make a decision. This concept of an opportunity cost, a really important one in economics. This means if I decide to do something with a resource, then that resource is no longer available to me to use for something else. That occurs as a result of scarcity and as a result of choice. The final one are the resources, and if you remember in economics we consider resources generally to be four things: land, labour, capital and enterprise, what we refer to as the factors of production. So those are three kind of important concepts that you need to be familiar with really before we kind of start getting into showing this diagrammatically. But I'm going to move on now and look at a simple example and how we use it to generate a production possibility frontier. So we're going to think about a farm, and this little diagram that I've drawn here, you can think of this as kind of being essentially a top-down view of the farm, an aerial view of the farm. And what you can see is that this farmer has 9 fields that he can use for various purposes, and I've given each of them a letter identity. So basically, he has those 9 fields. They're the same size, they're the same shape, and he has to decide what he's going to do with them. Now again, we're going to keep this simple to start with, so we're going to basically say that for each of those he has 2 options. He can either use a field to graze his cows, or he can use a field to grow wheat. So each of those fields he can use either to graze cows or to grow wheat, and he can make the decision for each one of those. So let's think about how we would show this on a production possibility frontier. So what we do then is we draw a set of axes like this, and on our axes we have the 2 options that the farmer has. So these 2 options down here that we spoke about earlier on. So option number 1 was that he could graze cows. So this axis is going to show the amount of cows being produced, and his other option is wheat, so this axis is going to show the amount of wheat. And this is the way that we demonstrate this. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be physical products like this. For instance, rather than thinking about the scarce resource as being land, which is what we're doing here because we're talking about fields, we could think of the scarce resource maybe as being time, essentially labour time. So there, the 2 things that might be on the axis might be, for instance, studying and partying or something like that. So basically the axes represent whatever the choice is which is being made, and it doesn't matter which way round they are so long as you are consistent in your explanation. So let's think about what happens then if the farmer starts to make his decisions. So let's say then that he can obviously decide that he is going to allocate all 9 of his fields, all of the fields A through I, to growing wheat. Now if he does that, his output of wheat is going to be quite high. We're going to be kind of out towards this end of the wheat axis. But obviously if he's dedicating all of his 9 fields to growing wheat, then he's not going to be producing any cows. So our cow output is going to be very low. What that means is that if he uses all 9 of these, then he will generate a point down here, and that will be 9 of wheat and 0 of cows. So that's the first option that he has. So he can either So he can decide to allocate all 9 to the production of wheat, which means his wheat output is high, it's over here. His cow output, though, is 0. None of his fields are being used for grazing cows. Obviously, there's the other end of the extreme as well, where he uses all of his fields for cows and doesn't grow any wheat at all. And that would then obviously give us a point up here where we would have 9 fields being used for cows. So we would have 9 units of cow production, I suppose, but we would have no wheat because none of the fields are being used for wheat. And what you could also see then is that within this we can then plot other points. So for instance, let's say he was going to use field plot A for cows, but all of the other ones for wheat. Then that would mean that he is going to have an output of 1 cow, so we would be here. The other 8 would all be producing wheat, which would give us a point, I suppose, approximately here. So that would be 8 units of wheat, 1 unit of cow. And we can continue like that. So he could then, I suppose, switch this one, which was previously wheat. He can now stop using that one for wheat, use this one for cows instead. So he now has 2 fields dedicated to cow output. But as a result of that, he has to give up wheat. He has to give up a field's worth of wheat. That's the opportunity cost. So then his wheat production will drop to 7. And you can see that as I'm doing this, I'm plotting a line, essentially. And essentially, as he switches each field from the production of wheat to the production of cows, he moves up the cow axis by 1 and down the wheat axis by 1. And what happens is that when we get all of those points, we can draw a line that goes through them all, sort of, and that is the ppf for this farmer. So that line represents all of the maximum output combinations that he could generate. So we've got 9 units of wheat, 0 units of cows, 8 units of wheat, 1 unit of cow, 7 units of wheat, 2 units of cows. We would also then have other points for 3 cows and 6 wheat, 4 cows, 5 wheat, 5 cows, 4 wheat, and so on and so on and so on, all the way up the line until we reach this point here where 9 units of cow production and 0 of wheat. So that is his ppf. And the way we describe this is that this is showing us his maximum output combinations given 2 key things. 1, current level of resources, and 2, constant technology. Now, what we can think about there, for instance, is if he were to add another field, that would obviously alter this this line. So this ppf is only true when the amount of resources available, in this case the amount of field space, remains constant, and that's what that line shows us. And as we move along the line, we generate opportunity cost. So as the farmer decided to increase his production of cows from 0 to 1 unit, he gave up 1 unit of wheat. And the 1 unit of wheat that he gave up here is the opportunity cost of his decision. And that's how we would show opportunity cost on a ppf diagram. So that's the first of 2 videos on the ppf. Key concepts there: scarcity. So in this case, it's the fact that there is a scarcity in the amount of fields that he has. That generates an opportunity cost. It means that if he uses the field for one thing, he can't use it for something else. And the resource which is scarce here, obviously we're talking about field space, and therefore we're talking about land. So that's how these three things link together. And the definition to remember for a ppf is that the ppf shows the maximum output combinations given the current level of resources and constant technology. The second video is going to start to apply some slightly more realistic ideas to that, challenge some of the assumptions that we have made here, and that will hopefully then give us a slightly more advanced model which we can use to reflect the real world situation.